This is a David and Goliath Clash 2 search and rescue flashlights, both offering around 1 kilometer range, but they do it in very different ways. So which is best, power or precision?
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Okay, so in this video we are going to look at each flashlight in terms of features and how they work, and then show you how they compare in the dark. And before we get into the details, let's have a look at each one close up. Okay, first up is this one. This is the Fenix LR50R, and this is all about power. It's big and heavy at 986 grams or 35 ounces, and it's classed as a search and rescue flashlight. It delivers a significant 12,000 lumens of maximum light output and has a maximum range of 950 meters and a maximum beam intensity which is just short of 226,000 candela. And if you want to know more about the relationship between lumens, candela and range, then I'll have a link to a video explaining all at the end of this video. I'm a big fan of Fenix and I own a few of their flashlights, and this feels as well put together as you might expect. It's got a T6 aluminium construction with a hard anodized coating and this steel crenulated bezel. Has a glass lens and an IPX rating of 8, which means it can be submerged to 2 meters for up to 30 minutes, and it's been tested to withstand a drop of 1.2 meters onto a hard surface. So it comes in a nice box and also comes with this holster, which is pretty substantial and well made and allows the flashlight to be carried on a belt or from a carabiner. As well as the holster, it comes with a wrist lanyard. I'm not sure I'd want to swing something this heavy around on my wrist, but nevertheless it comes with that. And it also comes with a USB-A to USB-C charging cable, and also a shoulder strap. That's an indication of how heavy this is, which attaches to this loop here on the flashlight. It also comes with this strange enamel metal thing here, and also a Velcro patch. We have here a USB-C charging port with this rubber cover, and then we have the shoulder strap fixing point because it's heavy, and this also has a tripod fixing point here because it's heavy. And then we have 2 switches and 4 LEDs, and therefore battery and charging status. The light utilizes luminous SST70 LEDs, and you can see from here that they are arranged in a quad array. So 4 LEDs, a bit like strapping 4 smaller flashlights together. And what that means is you don't get a single beam from a light source like this. You effectively get overlapping beams from each of these 4 light sources, and that means you get a mix of flood and beam. And according to the information, the angle of the floodlight is 75 degrees, whereas the beam is only 8 degrees. This flashlight is powered by an included 1600 milliamp hour high power delivery battery, which is this here, but you could actually power the flashlight with 4 21700 batteries. These are a standard size, 5000 milliamp hour each. However, the power delivery is reduced and the maximum light output drops from 12,000 lumens to 6,000 lumens. The good thing about this battery is that it can be fast charged at up to 4 amps, which means it can be fully charged in 4 hours, which is quite quick for a battery this big. And these LEDs here show the battery level in use and also the charging level when it's on charge. One great feature about this flashlight is that this USB-C port here is bi-directional, which means that this whole thing is a 1600 milliamp hour power bank. So if you plug your phone in here, for example, it will start charging, and that is enough power to charge my phone, which is an iPhone 13 Pro, around about 4 times. Let's have a look at the operation, and a quick press on either of these two buttons shows the battery level, and we can see here there's 3 LEDs on, which means it's between 60 and 80% charged. Then if you press and hold the right hand button for more than half a second, it brings on the flashlight at the last used setting, which in this case was the lowest eco mode at 50 lumens. And then by pressing the right hand button, you can cycle through the 6 modes right up to 12,000 lumens. So let's quickly do that. We've got mode 1 there, then 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. Then press and hold the same button and it turns the flashlight off. Always a challenge with this type of operation is that you have to cycle through the different levels to get to the one you want. So if you're at a mid-level and actually want to drop down to say the lowest eco mode, you actually have to step through turbo to get there, which is not ideal. The left hand switch is what they regard as a special mode switch, and the first press of that takes it straight into turbo, which is great to see. Then it steps through strobe and then Morse code SOS. So the way that would work is you have the flashlight on maybe at a sustainable level while you're looking for something. You think you might see something out there and you just need to very quickly press the left hand button. It goes straight into turbo. Then when you finish with that, you press the right hand button again and it goes to that preset level that you were using it at before. And then if you want to switch it to strobe, you press the left hand button twice and then you're in the strobe mode. And if you press it again, you go to the Morse code SOS, which I think has limited use, but I'm sure there's somebody out there who's used that to good effect somewhere. Then there are a couple of other useful features. You can lock this flashlight out by pressing both buttons down for around about 3 seconds, and it flashes a couple of times. Then when you press any of these buttons, you just get a flash from the front to say that it's locked out. To unlock the flashlight, you press and hold the 2 buttons again for around about 3 seconds, and then the light comes on at the eco mode. The other feature that we've got built in here is a proximity sensor, and when something comes close to the lens, when it's at full power, the power drops down, and that is to stop it overheating and reduce the risk of fire. Let's see that in action. So I'll bring the flashlight onto turbo and then bring it in close proximity to a surface. Then you can see the light has dropped right down. Then when it gets further away, then it comes on to full power again. So that is a really useful safety feature. Let's have a look at the chart, and you can see that the 12,000 lumen turbo mode operates until the temperature forces a drop down in power, and that happens after only about 20 seconds. After a further minute, it will have reached around 8,000 lumens, and then it will reach 3,000 lumens after around 10 minutes. So as with many high power flashlights, the turbo is for relatively quick blasts and not for long-term use. The 6,000 lumen high 2 mode will also start to drop down quite quickly over a few minutes. The 3000 lumen, 1350 and 50 lumen eco modes should though all run consistently until the battery starts to run out. At 1000 lumens, which is a really high light level, it will run non-stop for around 8 hours, which is a lot of light for a long time. And if you're really stuck, you can have 50 lumens, which is still a reasonable amount of light for 58 hours, which when you think about it is a week of nights at 8 hours a night. Okay, next up is the Nitecore P30i. This is also referred to as a long distance search and rescue light, but does things very differently to the Fenix. This is all about precision over power. The P30i is a lot more compact than this Fenix here, and it's also around about a quarter of the weight at 255 grams or 9 ounces, and it has a much lower maximum light output of 2000 lumens, and yet it has a longer range than the Fenix. This has a range of 1,000 meters. The Fenix was 950 meters. And this is backed up by the candela rating of this, which is 250,000 candela, versus the Fenix, which was 226,000 candela. So less power, but more intensity and longer range. And you can see from the numbers that this will have a narrower but more powerful beam, but much less spread of light. I'm also a fan of Nitecore and have several of their flashlights too, and this also feels really well made and really nicely finished. Again, aluminium construction and a hard anodized coating, which has more of a matte finish than the Fenix, which I really like. This one is also nicely packaged and it comes with quite a few accessories. We've got some O-rings and we've also got a belt clip. It attaches like that. That could clip on a belt or perhaps on a bag. I'm not quite sure how practical that is, but more practical I think is this holster, which also comes in the box, and that does fit it really well. And I think that's probably more practical. It has a belt loop there and also a Velcro strap there and a loop there that you can attach to a carabiner. So I think that is a practical way of carrying it, probably more so than this clip. In addition to that, you also get a backup battery option in the form of this casing, which takes CR123 batteries. Now, we don't see a lot of these in the UK generally, but I know they are popular in other parts of the world. And this gives you a backup battery option, perhaps if you're not going to have access to charging. So that's useful to have as well. And we also get the standard USB-A to USB-C charging cable. And then more interestingly, perhaps you get this, and this is a remote control for the flashlight. The way it works is it attaches to the USB-C port on the back of the flashlight, and it also has a clip that fastens into an indentation here, and that stops the cable coming out. So unlike some of the magnetic remote options you see on some of the flashlights, which can come off if pulled hard, this is a really solid connection. And now you have the capability to operate the flashlight remotely, which generally means when it's mounted on a gun. Not that we do much of that in the UK, because we don't really have guns. The P30i has a mechanical tail switch on the back there, and that is next to a covered USB-C port, which is for the remote control and also for charging. And there we have a blue LED which shows the charging status. There are lots of fins and ridges to help with cooling and also knurling here for grip. And it has a separate mode switch here on the body of the flashlight, and that has an inbuilt blue LED. And then we have the business end, which is this reflector, in the center of which we have a Cree XHP35 LED and what is described as PDOT, which stands for Precision Digital Optics Technology, which means a very deep and polished reflector with crystal coating and optical glass. This flashlight is also IPX rated. It can be submerged to a depth of 2 meters for up to 30 minutes. And this has also been tested to withstand a 1 meter drop. This is powered by a single but custom 21700 battery, which Nitecore call a 21700i. And what makes this different is that each end has both a positive and negative connection, unlike a standard 21700 battery, which has positive at that end and negative at the back. And that means that this flashlight won't work with a standard 21700. It has to use this custom 21700i from Nitecore, and that will put some people off. This flashlight can be charged at a maximum of 2 amps, which means it can be fully charged in 4 hours. The amount of charge when the flashlight is in use can be determined by this LED in the middle of the mode switch here. A solid blue light means it's more than 50% charged. If this flashes, it means it's under 50%. And if it flashes quickly, it means it's below 10% charged. Okay, let's have a look at the operation, and the tail switch can be used as a momentary on switch by half depressing, and then when you fully depress with a click, then the light stays on and it comes on at the last used light level. Once the light is on, you press the mode switch to cycle through the 5 different light levels from ultra low all the way up to 2000 lumen mode, which is the turbo mode, and then press it again and you cycle back through again. Again, a bit like the Fenix, it's not ideal that. It'd be nice if there was a mode where you could guarantee you could bring it on at the ultra low, because if you're at a mid-level setting and you actually want to go lower, you have to cycle through the high modes first, which is not ideal if you're trying to keep a low profile. This LED in the middle of the switch is actually really useful in total darkness to help you find the switch. You just spin the light round until you find the blue light. Otherwise, although it's raised, it is actually quite difficult to find. There is a feature here that is really useful, and that is when the flashlight is on at your chosen level. All you need to do is press and hold the mode button, and then it comes on immediately at turbo. So the way that works is you're looking for something, your flashlight mode is set at a light level that maintains battery life, for example, and then you see something and you press and hold the button, and then it comes on at full blast, and then when you've finished looking, you press it again and it goes back to the light level you were previously using. So that's a really practical way to use it. There is also a feature of this light that is quite unusual, and that is that it will still work even when it's switched off at the back here. So if I press and hold the mode switch, it comes on at 2000 lumens at turbo mode, and then when you let go, it goes off. And that's quite useful to get at turbo in a hurry if the flashlight is off. Although the LED is not on at this point, so it might actually be a little bit tricky to find the switch in the dark in the first place if you're in a hurry. There's also a couple of other features you can get to when the flashlight is turned off, and that is if you triple press this button, 1, 2, 3, then you get a beacon mode. And I quite like this mode. This, I think, could have its uses. It basically flashes like a strobe, but slowly. So it uses less power than a strobe, and it's great, I think, for trying to get attention. If you then press and hold this again, it goes to SOS mode, where it uses Morse code to flash SOS. I'm not entirely convinced, as I've said before, how useful that is, but again, I'm sure there's somebody who's used it to good effect somewhere. There is no lockout mode with this flashlight, but ordinarily a tail switch would isolate the battery. However, as we've seen here, the mode switch operates independently of the tail switch, which means if it was in a bag, say, and got compressed against the switch, then the flashlight could come on at turbo mode, and at the very least that could flatten the battery or potentially do worse if it got very hot. Now there is temperature regulation here, and you'd like to think it would reduce the power before it got dangerously hot, but it is worth bearing in mind. Normally with a flashlight like this, I would always recommend loosening the tail cap to disconnect the battery when you might be packing it, say, in your luggage. However, because the battery here has double-ended positive and negative, loosening doesn't disconnect the battery. In fact, you can remove the tail cap altogether and the flashlight will still come on at turbo if the button is depressed. So if you want to be super cautious, I would suggest you remove the battery altogether before packing a flashlight like this in your luggage. Then we have this remote control that comes with the P30i, and that connects to the USB-C port. It's held in place with this clip. And then this switch pad performs the functions of the 2 built-in switches, with one exception, and that is if you press the equivalent of the mode switch, the flashlight goes into an immediate strobe, and you can only get to that strobe using this switch pad. Without this remote control, you cannot access strobe on this flashlight. And that seems a bit strange to me, because a strobe is normally there to deter an attack. So my view is that would be more useful if this was handheld than if this was attached to a gun, because I would imagine the gun would do quite a good job of deterring an attack in the first place. A quick look at the chart would seem to suggest that the 2000 lumen output will last for 30 minutes, but the asterisk here means that it won't do that, because it will get hot quickly and the automatic temperature regulation will reduce the power so it doesn't overheat. So in the real world, expect the turbo light output to start dropping quite quickly, say within the first minute. So again, like many other flashlights, that turbo mode is for short blasts only. All the other modes should be able to maintain close to the suggested output for the suggested run times, although the high mode might be subject to some downshifting depending on the external temperature, but might not be noticeable. The ultra low, low and mid levels should not downshift at all, as they are unlikely to create any significant heat buildup. And when it comes to getting around at night, even 6 lumens in a tight beam pattern like this is enough to light your way in the darkness so you can see where you're putting your feet. And that means if you're careful to avoid totally exhausting the battery, you should always have enough light to see you home. And for the more cautious, a couple of CR123 batteries as backup will give you additional peace of mind, although it's worth mentioning that turbo is not available when using CR123s. Okay, it's time to get these flashlights outside and see how they compare. Okay, we're on a farm road with a wood at the top of a hill, starting with the Nitecore 6 lumens, now 85 lumens, now 385 lumens, then we have 1000 lumens, and now the maximum output of 2000 lumens. And if we freeze it there, we can see the edge of the tree line at the top of the hill, which is 200 meters away, and note the really tight beam pattern from the Nitecore. And if we compare that with the Fenix at 50, now 350 lumens, and then 1000 lumens, followed by 3000 lumens, then we have 6000, and then maximum output of 12,000 lumens. And if we freeze that at the same point, you can see the same tree line in the distance, but you can see more of it because it's a much wider light spread from the Fenix. Then if we compare both lights side by side, looking at a still frame of the top of the hill, you can see that the tree line is illuminated at a similar intensity but a much tighter beam pattern for the Nitecore, whereas the Fenix covers a much broader area. Okay, we're now halfway up the hill, and in the distance there the tree line is 100 meters away. That's the Nitecore, and you can see from that image that it's much brighter now as we get closer. Still a very tight beam pattern, and then if we compare that with the Fenix, a much broader spread of light, similar intensity at the target but covering a much wider area. We're now on the far side of the wood, starting with the Fenix in a very tight light pattern, and that is 65 meters away. Now we've picked out here the cell tower, which is in the wood at 70 meters away, and you can see a very tight beam pattern picking that out. Now if we compare that with the Fenix, you can clearly see a much broader light spread all the way up to the cell tower. The cell tower is a similar illumination, but everything around it is lit up as well. And if we do a freeze frame of both light sources, you can see the illumination level is similar at the target area, but everything around it is very different, with the Fenix having a much broader spread of light. And then if we get a bit closer and zoom in on the images, it makes it even more apparent. So the Nitecore, if you know where you're pointing it, has the same sort of intensity as something which is 6 times more powerful, but all that extra light is spread into a wider beam pattern. And then finally we have more of an urban environment in this courtyard area here, starting with the Nitecore, building up to the 2000 lumen maximum output. That wall in the distance is 25 meters away, so clearly it can go well beyond that. And then if we compare that with the Fenix, we've got a common pattern now, whereby the Fenix has this much broader light spread and a hotspot in the middle, but a broader hotspot because it's got a much wider beam pattern and more power to dissipate all that light. So which is best? Well, as you might have guessed, which is best comes down completely to the application or use case. In both cases, the turbo mode is really for short blasts only, so you should operate the lights at a sustainable power level during, say, a search, and when you think you have something in sight, you can hit the turbo. which in both cases can be done with a single button press. So just looking at a power level that can be maintained, the Fenix should be able to run consistently at 3000 lumens for 2 hours and 40 minutes, and that gives you a 480 meter quoted range and has obviously a wide spread of light. The Nitecore can maintain something closer to 1000 lumens, and that would be for around about an hour and 30 minutes, but give you a longer 722 meter quoted range, but obviously with a narrower beam of light. And it's worth pointing out that the quoted range is based on something called the ANSI FL1 standard. And this can be a bit misleading because the practical real life range is likely to be much less than the quoted range. In fact, something more like a quarter of the quoted range. Also, operating at a reduced light level of 3000 lumens instead of 12,000 lumens sounds like it will be as quarter as bright. However, our perception of light is non-linear, and 3000 lumens will actually only appear half as bright as 12,000 lumens to the human eye. So using both of these flashlights at a reduced sustainable level is not quite as bad as it sounds. So the users will be able to determine which of these is better for them based on their particular use case. But if I was floating around in the sea at night, I would rather the rescuers had the Fenix, as it covers more area with more light. Having said that, let's not forget the weight issue. The Fenix is much bigger and 4 times heavier than the Nitecore. So if I'm on foot, moving fast and covering distance, mountain rescue springs to mind, then I would be reluctant to carry the Fenix, whereas the Nitecore would be no issue at all. In a boat or other vehicle, however, where weight might not be so much of an issue, then the Fenix might well be the better option. And then finally, there is the matter of price. Well, as you might expect, the Fenix is quite a bit more expensive than the Nitecore. This is around $300 plus tax, which equates to around £300, including our 20% purchase tax. And the Nitecore is around $140 plus tax, or £140, including tax in the UK. And I should point out that although this is not a sponsored review, both of these flashlights were sent to me by the suppliers at no cost to me. The LR50R was sent for review, and I requested the P30i from Nitecore so I could make this comparison. And if you want to know more about either of these flashlights, I'll put some links in the description below this video. So the choice is yours. I believe they both have a place depending on your use, and that makes them both winners to me. And here is the video I promised, which explains what the various flashlight terms actually means. That's it for this video. Thank you as always for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.